To come together and united we shall stand. Let us live and strive for freedom in South Africa.
The obituary of Morwa Rebecca Kotane. Morwa Rebecca Kotane ni Sibitlo, the third child of Ratlagane and Khumo Sibitlo, was born and raised at Matukaneng, Tabanchu in the Free State on not complete her schooling and began working from a young age. Mema Kotane went to Johannesburg in the 1930s to look for economic opportunities. She first worked as a domestic worker. Then she had a stint working in various garment factories. Through her entrepreneurial spirit, she began selling women's clothes within the community and beyond. Mema Kotane met her husband, Ntate Moses Kotane, while visiting her elder sister, Miriam Morwani Khatebe. Ntate Kotane was visiting his political ally, Ntate Kawa Khatebe, in Alexander Township, when he was attracted and completely mesmerized by the beauty, charm, and style of Rebecca Morwa. Mema Kotane was married to Ntate Kotane in the early 1940s. The couple's marriage was extremely challenging, given Ntate Kotane's political activities, which entailed frequently going underground and suffering the harassment and arrest by the Special Branch Force of the police. It is for this reason that Moses Kotane had to keep it a secret from his wife that he was about to skip the country, which he did in 1962. Mema Kotane did not let her political activities dissolve with her husband being exiled. She participated in many political activities, such as taking part in the defiance campaigns in the 1950s and the mobilization towards the adoption of the Freedom Charter in 1955. In 1956, Mema Kotane participated in the Women's March to the Union Buildings, where she was among the women detained by the apartheid regime with other stalwarts of the movement. Mema Kotane also took part in the famous Alexander Bus boycott in 1957. Mema Kotane suffered a lot in those years. Through all that harassment and persecution, she remained steadfast in the hope of freedom and reuniting with her husband. When Tate Kotane passed away in Moscow in 1978, Mema Kotane and her family were refused the opportunity to bury her husband by the apartheid government. Mema Kotane and Tate Kotane had 7 children, 3 girls and 4 boys. One of the girls passed away at birth and the other lived only 6 months. Hence, reference is always made in history books of only 5 children. Kotane raised her children essentially as a single mother, full of love, full of grace, and extremely kind. She was a tower of power, her home becoming not only that of her children, but her many nieces, nephews, and other children not necessarily related by blood. Although kind and sweet, she was strict with all children under her roof. She insisted that children get a good education. Dropping out of school was not even an option. Mema Kotane was relentless in her quest to raise money for anyone under guidance for tuition and scholarship. Today, this is evidenced by many men and women who came under her wing, who today occupy positions of high esteem. Mema Kotane is survived by her younger sister aged 92, 3 children, 11 grandchildren, and 21 great-grandchildren. Ke motho wa ga Sebitlo le Sebitlwane. Ke motho wa ga Motile le Motilenyane. Motshweneng. Ke tshweni e borete. Ke nna tshweni ga ke naiwe matlhong, ke naiwa mmeleng. Robala ka kagiso ngwetsi ya Bakwena, mogale wa bagala, seganka sa diganka, setlogolo sa ga moloto, molatola batho. Tsa gabo ga di latolwe.
Greetings, comrades and leaders, the Kotane family. My name is Jacob Mamabolo. I am the co-program director for this memorial service. As we heard from the obituary, the Kotane family and Mom Rebecca Kotane over a century played a critical role in the struggle for freedom. As we gather here today, we celebrate this rich contribution and the life of a mother, community leader, an activist, and a freedom fighter. Now, in this first segment, we will hear from ANC Women's League President, Comrade Bathabile Dlamini. Since Mama Rebecca Kotane was a member of the ANC Women's League for most of her life. At age 108 when she died, and with decades more than 40 years of uninterrupted service, she was also a member of the Veterans League. We therefore also have a message from the Secretary General of the Veterans League, Mamnazo Khumalo. The two leagues will be followed by the CEO of Moses Kotane Foundation. The foundation plays an important role in keeping alive the Kotane legacy. We start with Comrade Bathabile Dlamini.
The ANC Women's League would like to pay its sincere condolences to the Kotane family on the passing on of Mama Rebecca Kotane, who was our living legend. In the same vein, we want to pass our gratitude to Mam Kotane and the Kotane family for being part of the struggle till the end. We want to thank her family while it remained their duty to look after Ma Kotane, for looking after her, taking care of her, and allowing every one of us to visit Ma Kotane, and we always found her in good shape. But we would also like to thank the movement, the Alliance, and the MDM structures for looking after the Kotane family during difficult times, more particularly the South African Communist Party. They were exemplary, and we all had to follow them in looking after and taking care of a life well lived. Ma Kotane lived with the people, and she was very loyal, committed, and resilient. Ma Kotane was a revolutionary, and we therefore dip our banners in her remembrance and in solidarity with the movement at large. She was exemplary. She never lived above her people. She never made demands to the organization, and she kept the name of Baba Kotane, like Ma Winnie, like Ma Albertina Sisulu, in the minds of the people. Ma Kotane was part of the liberation struggle, and the ruthless apartheid colonial system never stopped Ma Kotane from being a revolutionary. Ma Kotane emulates selflessness, bravery, loyalty, and the fighting spirit that went hand in hand with humility and respect. Ma Kotane was a matriarch that kept her family together when it was difficult. Nothing stopped Ma Kotane from being part of the struggle. The vicious system, the arrests, never stopped her from being part of the struggle. He was part of the 1956 march. He was part of the Freedom Charter and the volunteers that collected people's demands. And her name, like those of Moses Kotane, Bab Mapita, Josie Palmer, Charlotte Maxeke, Tata Matiba, Helen Joseph, Ray Alexander, will remain engraved in the hearts of all South Africans. She is joining the top committed leaders of the movement that remained in the struggle when it was not fashion to be part of the struggle. We call on all South Africans to pick up her spear, more particularly the youth, and more especially young women, and fight for the total liberation of the country. Remain focused and ensure that no one dies from COVID. There must be end of violence against women, and there must be true radical economic transformation and the expropriation of the land without compensation, as well as free quality education. That remains on top of the agenda for the fight for equality and equity. Thank you very much.
Amandla, Amandla, I greet you all, comrades. Our movement has lost one of our oldest veteran, stalwart, freedom fighter, one of our women's march campaigner, one of our women who were detained due to the past loss. Mama Kotane. Mama Kotane, the wife of the former South African Communist Party Secretary General, Malume Moses Kotane. Mama Kotane, one of our centenarian, has lived through the painful oppression of apartheid. She has experienced the 1918 influenza. She has experienced the World War II. She participated in the pass laws, the women pass laws. She has seen the treason trials. She has seen the Rivonia trials. She has seen the 1976 riots and experienced the sufferings of our children under the Bantu education. She has seen the release of our leaders from Robben Island, and she was one of those who participated in receiving them. The 1994 South African transition, she was part of the people who were excited because we all had to fight for our freedom. She has experienced the 2019 COVID-19. What a highly committed member of the ANC, highly committed up till the end of her life. All of this has occurred in Mama Kotane's lifetime. What a great contribution to our movement to have such type of people, mothers, who are not there for any other gain of money or whatever. Comrades, let's celebrate the life of one of our selfless and committed, brave, struggle, stalwart, Mama Kotane. May her soul rest in peace. Amandla, thank you.
Program Director, leadership of the alliance structures, leadership of government, leadership of the diplomatic corps, members of different communities, members of the media, all protocol is duly observed. It is with a sad feeling that I have to talk about Mama Kotane in her passing into the other world. Firstly, I would like to extend my warm condolences to both the Kotane and Sibito families and everyone that got to be touched in any way by Mama Kotane's life. Ka Sesotho we say, Phephi. Firstly, Mama Kotane was born in 1912 in Matukaneng in Tabanchu. And she was born within the most important era in our struggle of our people. A year when the elders of different communities in the country have just launched the People's Party, the African National Congress. On the other hand, the other minority grouping were finalizing their strategy of the 1913 Land Act. She lived to experience the architectural system of apartheid. She married not only as a coincidence, but by God's design, the longest serving GS of the Communist Party, Isitwalandwe Siaparankwe Ntate Moses Kotane. And she happened to be the longest serving member of the movement to the age of the ANC till 2021. And Mama Kotane and ANC are 109 this year, although she was yet to B109 on the 12th of February. Mama Kotane was a true embodiment of a true revolutionary ideology. She sacrificed her life's ambition at a young age for the liberation of our people. Her commitment to her marriage and emancipation of the people of this country was indeed a deep one. When Ntate Kotane was on a number of political missions, both in the country and abroad, Mama Kotane remained focused and resilient at home and within the community. She was arrested so many times, having to leave the children alone. Her house was broken into so many times by the apartheid police, mostly at night, and it would happen to be in winter nights. And she always remained strong. She was persuaded to divorce her husband in so many times, and she profusely refused and continued to become indeed the pillar of strength to the family. Mama Kotane continued to be the equilibrium force in her family, community, and that of the country, taking part in the forefront of the 1954 committees to the formation of the Freedom Charter and the 1956 march to the Union Building against the past law and many other tasks that she underwent. Indeed, Mama Kotane was a woman of principles, a woman of faith, a woman with a focus par excellence, a woman with a motherly character, a woman with total patience, a radical woman who knew her space and protected the space with absolute integrity, a woman whose loyalty has been maximally tested. Indeed, we are talking about Imbokodo, Mama, indeed, Masechaba. As she was the first patron of the Moses Kotane Foundation, she mandated us to preserve her legacy and that of Ntate Moses Mawane Kotane accordingly. And we are soon to launch the Moses Kotane Family Trust that will work close with the foundation in preserving the legacy of Mama with all the justice it deserves. When we want to locate Mama's legacy, it's in her resilience and her fight against the system of patriarchy and that of gender-based inequalities. Remember, the greatest legacy everyone needs to leave behind when departing to the other world is good character and a life well lived in faith. And Mama just did that. Rest in power, Mama Rebecca Kotane. Malibongwe igama lamakhosikazi. Long live the undying spirit of Mama Kotane, long live. Maatla, and I thank you.
Thank you to the Women's League President, Comrade Batabile Dlamini, the Veterans League SG Mama Natso Kumalo, and the Kotane Foundation CEO, Comrade Steve Mashia, for those moving tributes. Indeed, a woman of foresight, a woman of great strength, and she's seen many, many things that makes her an embodiment, actually, of not just the ANC's history, but the history of South Africa. Mama Rebecca Kotane spent a large part of her time in Gauteng province, in Alexandra, but during the last few decades, She was a resident of Imink Street, now called Beyers-Naudé Drive, Diepkloof in Soweto. As we will hear, she brought up her family in the midst of severe challenges, but always positive and lively. Our next segment is therefore tributes from Soweto community members, as well as tributes from her best friend, Anastasia Twene, and family members, Molwani Kotane, her grandson, Ansara Maki, the firstborn daughter, Dolly Kulwana, and son, His Excellency Ambassador Sam Kotane.
Okay, my name is Mlifili Boa. I reside in Diepkloof, Zone 1. I'm a member of African National Congress, also a member of Umkhonto we Military Veterans Association. You know, it is very sad to lose Makotane, even if their age, you know, it was above 100. I mean, it was the same age as African National Congress. I think that the woman has worked a lot, especially with her husband, Moses Kotane, who passed on in 1978. He was buried in Russia and reburied in South Africa. I think that was 2015. You know, we have to check also the harassment of the security branch from the woman, which other injuries were caused by the security branch, you know, harassing her and knowing very well that his Moses Kotane is not around the country. He's in an external missions, especially in Russia, in the Soviet Union. But we said, Kuku, robala ka khotso, o e bapetse party ya gago, re tla dula re ntse re o gopola. Thank you.
Dumelang, ke nna Sweetness Ngobeni. Ke dula ko strateng sa bo Makotana Masupa Drive. Kuku Makotana, she is our leader. She's the member of the Women's League of the Moses Kotane branch in Ward 28 in Zone 10 in Johannesburg region. My condolences to the family is that Kuku ke kopa o robale ka khotso. Ki ema jena ki ema ditlhakong tsa the Young Women's Desk ya Women's League ya Zone 10. Ki ema ditlhakong tsa community ya Moses Kotane, ki ema ditlhakong tsa batho ba Masupa Street. Re lahlehetswe empa hobane wena o yentse 109 re re modimo o hlonolofaditse. We want to say aluta continua. O ilo kopana libo Oliver Tambo, o ilo kopana libo Mandela, o ilo kopana kaofela libo Charlotte Maxeke, as is the sanitary year ya Charlotte Maxeke. Re re ho wena o robale ka khotso. To the Kotane's family, re tshidisa le lona, re re tutuzegani. And the other thing what I want to say ke gore Mpomi, Ausi, Buti, Ntate Kotane, the ambassadors and everybody, as rata sa Mema Kotane, re tshidisa le lona, re re ha le tlo tsamaya Jehova a bane le lona. We love you as the ANC family and as the Moses Kotane family. Thank you.
Greetings, comrades. I'm here to send my condolences to the Kotane family. As a member of the Young Communist League here in the district of Linda Jabane, we have had the opportunity to work with Ugogo Kotane for the longest of times. We just want to say condolences to the family of the Kotane. The shade that was provided by Uma Kotane will continue to be enjoyed by the youth of Diepkloof. The fountain of wisdom that she forever provided, the youth of Diepkloof will continue to drink from it. So without wasting a lot of time, comrades, we just want to say to the family, and we will forever miss Ugogo, and we will forever acknowledge the contribution she made to the struggle here in Diepkloof and here in the country.
Inalaka ke Anastasia Chweni. Ke tletse go pitletse mona Gauteng ka nna mo tlase ga Mme Makotana ke tlhaga Botswana ke le Makoti mona. Mme Makotana o nkgodisitse o nthutile dilo tse dintsintsi. Ke phetse le ene nako e telele ne ke robala le ene ke tsoga le ene. Ne re nwa teka go fela le Mme Makotana. Ene Mme Makotana ntho a nna a rata na rata nnete. Nna rata ngwanyana o ithatang o ntutile go apara o ntutile dilo tse kaofela le go phega. Mme Makotana ntho engwe le engwe ga na utlwile botlhoko o na o bolelela nna. Mme Makotana ke tlo mo gopola ka dintho tse di ngata fela o ile a nthare ana ga ke tsamaya mo lefatsheng lena o opelle pina e reng o opelle pina e ke e ratang wa e tseba pina ga Mme Makotana a re o e bine until le ketsi le theoge ke pina e reng morena o ba etele bana botlhe mo lefatsheng o rile ke e bine until a tsene le pina ye nngwe ke lebetse ya gage ya ena e rata fela a roba le ka kagiso Mme Makotana ke mme o nna nthuta dilo tse dintsi ke mme o na rata go apea ke mme o na itse dilo tsotlhe kaofela a nthuta dilo tse di ngata le bana ba gage se ke na le sone mo seleng sa ka bana ba gagwe ga ba se tsebe ke kopa gore a robale ka kgotso Modimo a mo robatse ka kgotso o nthile a re e re ga ke tsamaya mo lefatsheng le ke ka tlhokofala ana o boele ga eno Botswana gobane o tlo sotlega ga ke le teng ke a leboga a robale ka kgotso
Ke nna Rebecca Kotane. I'm the eldest son of Makotane's youngest son, Isaac Kotane. And kona nkgono Makotane ne le nkgono. Ne ke sa mo shebe as a stalwart of the movement or the wife of Moses Kotane. Kona, she was just a typical grandmother. I mean, every time ke feta ko yena, from a young age, even to the point when I had a grey beard, she would always insist gore ke robale ko yena, ke je dijo. I couldn't pass go Deep Roof just for 10 minutes. It had to be a proper occasion. She would always insist gore ngwana ka robala. Tsholelang mauane ko kitchening mo. So that's how I know nkgono, just as my grandmother, somebody very loving. I think the only time I remember having an altercation in nkgono is when I had dreadlocks and she insisted I should cut my dreadlocks. For those few times I would avoid nkgono because I really love my dreads. And I also remember when she was 90 something years of age, I said to nkgono, why is it 100? Ko 100. Well, she passed 100, and her years beyond 100, she was quite strong. She had a good memory. She knew everyone's telephone number in the family by head, and she was just full of funny stories, you know. And I'm really going to miss her. It's easy to say, oh, Pumotso, but not so fair. But at the end of the day, and you don't just your mind, your heart doesn't listen to reason like that. One will still miss her, despite knowing that she's rested and she's gone to a place where she's been wanting to go.
Nna ke buella ba ga Sebitlo. Mme Makotane ne le moradi wa Sebitlo. O belegetse ko Thabantsho ko Matukaneng. Ke mona ba dula teng. Ke moradi wa ga Ratlhagane Isaac Sebitlo le Khumo Mamorwa Sebitlo. Ke ngwana wa boraro wa ga Khumo le Ratlhagane Sebitlo. O goletse ko Thabantsho, a tloga ko Thabantsho, a tla Gauteng. Go itleng ga gagwe ko mo Gauteng, ke tla e tsaya ke Motšhweni a ke re ke Motšhwening. Moradi ya Sebitlo ke Motšhwening, o bina Tšhweni. Ke Tšhweni, ke naiwa mmele matlhong ga ke naiwe.
ke ha a tla tloga ge ha ke tla tsaya ya botshelo jwa gagwe ba go tla mo Gauteng. Ke itse ha ana a dula ko Alexander ko number 32 11th Avenue. Re ne re dula le Mamogolo na Mama Kotane ke mitsa Mamogolo ka ge mme wa ka e le lastborn ya bo Makotane. O re go disitse yalo ke tla re ke tla mitsa Mamogolo ka ga ke tlwaetse. Mamogolo re dutse le ena ko 11 number 32 ko Alexander a re godisitse e ne le masetšhaba. O na phutile setšhaba se sotlhe le ba ga Sebitlo ba le teng mo ntlong ya ga Kotane re dutse jalo re le ba ga Sebitlo re tswa re le ko Thabantsho.
Ka ke Doli Besi Khunwana ke nna ngwana wa ga Rebecca Kotane ke first born wa ga Rebecca Kotane ka latelwa ke bashimane ba 4. Mama Kotane ke o tsala ko Thabantsho ke o tata ra tlhaganele mama morwa ine le ngwana wa boraro mo ra tlhaganele mama ine le motho o molemo o tsene sekolo gona ko Thabantsho go itlhela ka nako e le a kgala kre batho na ba fella ka bo SABC ana fitle o ile ya ko high school ka bona up to standard 7 aba tswa a ya go bereka a bereka di kitchen. Then from there, I bereka di factory right through. Inele ha na sale ko Thabantsho inele motho o motsa gagolo o molemo a rata kereke a rata batho gagolo bonkgono le bana bontate mogolo le bana ona a direla motho mo lomo mo setšhabeng inele ngwana o direlang batswadi ba gagwe gagolo. I think mo batho ba khale mo ile inele ena motho a ntla o ile nga rekala batswadi ba gagwe furniture data gagwe o na lema a mo rekela megoma sheltene sa le chipi then so inele motho na le pelo bonolo. She was a soft spoken somebody a rata batho o na sa rate dipuo tse di ngata. Then hana tle mo Gauteng a tlo bereka o berekile di kitchen for a very short space of time aba a bereka di kitchen for a very long time. Robala ka khotso mo training wetse ya bakwena ba ga se tshele ile ba ga ndate Kotane Makotane ne le mo training papa Kotane
Diviso ke Itumeleng Molantwa ke secretary ya COSATU mo Johannesburg. Go le lapa la Kotane a re lebogeng gore lebile la re tlisetsa senatla la re tlisetsa mme la re tlisetsa an activist o ileng a re thusa mo mathateng mo matshwenyegong gore re bone kgololosego ya rona go fitlhelang nakong e. Matshidiso go le lapa lotlhe matshidiso go botlhe bao ba neng ba motsebe.
Sabi Margaret Baloyi Idula Zone 2 cohort 28. I'm a member of ANC and Women's League, Veterans League. Kinna ke tshwariwa go mo 28. Ke tshwariwa go mo 28. Samliana Makotane. Makotane remoni bophelo ba hae. Ne ke tla every day maybe go tla leadership ya go dimo. Ke tla ba mpitsa gore ke tla antsa a bua e le magwego o strong. Ke ne ke re ka molaetsa wa Makotane re ka dula re tshwere thata. Ke re ba ga Kotana tshedisega mme le mone modimo mo file matsatsi a mo fa le bonus ene le lona le godile a ke kgole gore ke tshole ditlogolo le ditlogolwana a ke kgole go tla thibellang magwego gore a tsamaye ka fela phutullang dipelo tsa lona magwego a tsamaye ka khotso a yo robala le ntate Kotana ko Rustenburg.
Ke mo ipone Khumane ke nna motlasa modulasetulo wa South African Communist Party, Linda Jabani District. Ke tsebile mme Makotane ka nako e telele. E ne le mme ya imametseng ka mehla le matsatsi, e ne le mme ya nang le lerato. Ha o no kena lapeng ha hae, o no fumana kgotso, lerato. Ka mehla ne re dula re thabile ha re na le yena. Fela ntho e nngwe e nkareng re thabetse haholo boteng ba rona le yena. Ke ntho ya hore o na bua ka molekane wa hae nako ena kaofela, o na bua ka Ntate Kotane, botle ba hae. Ne le motho a ratang ntho tse ntle ha o ile ho yena. Re ne re ba le motlotlo ka mehla ha re na le yena. Re ne re dula re le ka mehla ka February ne re ya ho yena, re lo celebrate le yena tsatsi la hae la tswalo. Re le Linda Jabani District, re lahlehetswe haholo, re bohloko. Fela re shebile dilemo tsa hae hore o sebeditse. Ha se ha bobebe moo ebang re fumana baholo ba rona ba fihlela dilemo tse ebang o di fihletse mme Makotane. Ene re lebohela le leloko la hae hore amohela ka lapeng la hae moo ebang ba ne ba re fa mofuthu ka mehla le matsatsi. Ho no sa be le dikgang kapa mathata, fela re ne re dula re amohelehile, re ikutlwa re thabile ka mehla ha re kena ka lapeng la mme Makotane.
My name is Sam Sohogwane Kotane. I'm Rebecca Kotane's son. There are 3 of us remaining in the family: my sister Dolly, my brother Joe, and myself. 2 members of the family of our siblings are deceased. Rebecca Kotane was born on the 12th of February, 1912. She died 35 January 2021, 12 days shy of her 109th birthday. I have thought a great deal about Ma's birthday year, 1912, and I've wondered what it is that makes it special. In so doing, 2 interesting coincidences cropped up. One is the formation of the South African Native National Congress, Native National Congress, what we know today as the African National Congress. On the 8th January 1912, in Bloemfontein. 35 days later, on 12 February to be exact, Ratlagane and Mamorwa Sibitlo gave birth to a 3rd child, Morwa Rebecca, in the sleepy town of Tabanchu, some 70 kilometers away from Bloemfontein. Interestingly, Tabanchu also produced 2 presidents of the African National Congress. The Reverend Zacchaeus Mahabane led the organization for 2 separate spells, that is 1924 to 1927, then again from 1937 to 1940. The 8th president, Dr. James Moroka, served in that capacity from 1949 to 1952. So kudos to the sleepy town of Tabanchu. Not only did Bloemfontein bequeath us the African National Congress, but one of these countries deeply committed Afrikaner revolutionary. I refer here to Bram Fischer, a staunch communist and patriot who dedicated his life to fighting white minority rule for the establishment of a democratic South Africa. Now, as we celebrate Ma's passing away, I would like for us to keep in mind the coincidence of her birth with the role of the Free State in its early struggle years. And in this regard, the personalities this province produced. Kotane, like the ANC, lived, well, the ANC continues to live, but Kotane unfortunately has left us. She was a tower of strength to the family. When her husband left the country, skipped the country in 1962, she was left alone to fend for the family, take care of the kids, make certain that we went to school, made certain that we kept in the straight line, and it is to her that we as family and grandchildren owe, what it is that we've become today. We are very grateful to her. We mourn her loss, but she lived a very long life. I mean, she's run a good race. We hope she rests in peace. I would like just to go back to the 40s and 30s. Kotane was married, met Moses Kotane sometime in the early 40s. She was visiting her sister, Aunt Miriam Marwani Khadebe, who was then married to Gawa Khadebe. And Gawa Khadebe, if you read Ubaba Nelson Mandela's Long Walk to Freedom, there's a bit there about Gawa Khadebe, who apparently politicized Nelson Mandela in the 40s when he came to Johannesburg. Now, Gawa Khadebe was a member of the African National Congress, but he parted ways with the organization and became a member of the Pan-Africanist Congress. Now, both my mother and her sister were married to these two politicians, Moses Kotane and Gawa Khadebe, both of whom skipped the country in the 60s. And both sisters were never to see their husbands again. The husbands, as you will know, died in exile. But Kotane, safe to say that she played her role quietly in the background. She was involved, in the women's struggles in the 50s. She marched with the women who marched to the union buildings to protest against the past laws. She was incarcerated at the forts, what was called, popularly known as Number 4. She participated in the bus boycotts of the 50s, Alexander bus boycotts of the early 1950s, where she and members of the community of Alexander Township resolved that they were not going to pay the extra penny or so that that PADCO wanted them to pay. And that strike broke down PADCO. Now, it was the resolution of the community of Alexander Township and those members of the community that organized it, that brought PADCO to its knees. Now, she played a role in the background. She was never one who was in the forefront, but she was a woman of strong resolve, greatly supported Moses Kotane, her husband, and suffered through, the trials and tribulations that the apartheid regime visited upon the Kotane family. I think with those words, that's it. We sorely will miss her, but like I say, she's lived a life that is full. 108 really is no child's play. Like Johnny Walker, we used to say, she kept walking, but she's now left us. And we say, rest in peace. Mawarona, Sipi Amorolo. Minat Sipi Amorolo. Thank you.
Thank you for those revolutionary messages and tributes, which shows how grounded Mama Rebecca was in her community, living amongst the people, and dedicating her life to freedom, whilst bringing up her family, indeed a pillar of strength. Our next set of tributes is a continuation of this great Kotane book of South African history. Comrade Moses Kotane spent much of his life and was later buried in the then Soviet Union, now Russia, to speak about this link between Russia and the South African struggle. We will hear from Russian Ambassador Comrade Mikhail Petrakov. Upon his death in 1978, Comrade Moses Kotane was buried in the prestigious Novodevichy Cemetery in Moscow. In 2015, his remains were repatriated to South Africa and in the village of Pella in the northwest on 14th March 2015. Representing the Northwest today is Comrade Zake Stolo, who is a leader of the Veterans League in the province. Kotane was part of the women who organized the historic 1956 march to the Union buildings. The last speaker in this segment will be Me Mante Mpatlele, a representative and family member of one of the march leaders, Mama Lilian Goyi. She talks to us from Polokwane in Limpopo.
Oh, sorry. My voice is not clear. Rebecca Kotane, 101.
My name is Nompumelelo Kotane. Rebecca Kotane is my grandmother.
Mawane Moses Kotane. Moses Kotane is the motto bereka lunchtime. Sa then I got a Communist Party. This is ANC. The motto bereka lunchtime. Oh, khona go le set mare khona go la pile ka entsa light ka gore ke a tseba gore o tshela bereka lunchtime.
She's saying it was very sad when my grandfather left.
Oh, I guess I hope I hank. Got it about 62, I'm not man.
Yeah, Boma 62, 63.
62, 63.
Because she knew that he was doing work for the nation and for the people. So as hard as it was, she accepted it.
Women's League. 20,000 women. We were
By the time of the Women's March to Pretoria, my grandmother was living in Alexander. So herself and various other women from all over South Africa, from Bloemfontein, from PE, 20,000 women, who then took on the march and went to the Union buildings. They requested the attention of the president. They were told that he was unavailable. So they all returned to their respective homes, and upon returning, they got arrested by the police, got taken to a police station called...
Dear friends, it is with a feeling of deep sorrow that we have learned about the departure of Rebecca Kotane. She was an outstanding stalwart of the liberation struggle and will always be remembered for her courage and firm civic stand during the trying times of South African history. The Kotane name means a lot for South Africans and Russians alike. Both Rebecca Kotane and her spouse Moses Kotane have played a crucial role in forging strong bonds of friendship between the South African Communist Party, the African National Congress, and the USSR. Our country offered political, economic, and ideological support to those who bravely resisted the injustices of the apartheid regime, and Moses Kotane was one of them. We take pride in the fact that the Soviet Union contributed to the development of such a prominent figure in the history of South Africa. Remaining exiled until the end of his life, Mr. Kotane had to endure the heartbreaking grief of being separated from his beloved family. Nonetheless, the woes which Madame Kotane had to go through might have been even greater. She and her son were left alone to the mercy of the apartheid government. But despite all the challenges, she remained faithful to the just cause of the liberation struggle and continued to take part in numerous defiance campaigns. The Kotane family created one of the brightest pages in the history of our country's relationship. It is therefore especially sad when we learn about the passing of such people, the people who embody the historically rooted friendship between Russia and South Africa. I wish to present our solidarity, sympathy, and condolences to the family, comrades, and friends of Rebecca Kotane. May her soul rest in peace. Thank you.
Kotane's we bow our heads. I seem to have difficulties with the technology here. May I start by saying we in the Northwest, where the remains of Kotane, Lintate Kotane are lying, we bow our heads and lower our flags to honor Rebecca Kotane for her support to Tate Kotane and her direct participation in the struggle against apartheid. We keep on admiring her resilience, commitment, and patience. The last time Kotane saw Tate Kotane was way back in 1963, but Rebecca Kotane kept the faith. She resisted all enemy provocation and focused on raising the family, and she kept the home fires burning. Mema Kotane leaves behind a strong legacy and lessons, especially to the youth and young women in particular. The lesson that be in the vanguard of the struggle and equally raise the family until you raise grandchildren. Our commitment and word, which we need to keep to honor Mema Kotane, is that we will continue building the ANC, defend the gains of the working people, build a strong government that will transform our society for a better life of our people. This is the only monument that we need to build and leave for Mema Kotane. To the family we say, Homotsehang amo wa gamero ba le kakagisa. Ra leboga.
Tobela, ke dumedisa ba lapa la ga Kotane, veterans tsa ANC, leadership ya ANC, le setšhaba ka moka. Nna ke nna Mante Mphahlele, cousin ya Lilen Masidiba Matabane Ngoyi, you are even the first president ya basadi ba ANC, e le gong yena mokgotsi o mogolo wa Kotane. Kotane ke mo tseba so ke ka baka la Lilian. In fact, a ke mo tsebe kudu mara ke tla bolela ka mo rile ra kopana ka ntshe ra berekisana le yena. Ka 76 re kopane ga Lilian ga Mangoyi e le re bana ba batho ba go di ba spraya maburu ka dilo ka dithu ba nyaka metsi bana ka bani ntena. Gas it was so strong, so re kitima le bo Kotane re thusa bana ba. E le re before that re ile ra ya ka moka Bloemfontein re lo boloka Prime Fisher through Mangoyi le Makotana ra sepela ba khopela re ke organize because no gona le dinamela. So re ile Bloemfontein le bo Makotane ra boa. Thereafter ra tshwanela ke go ya go my brother's place go Northwest aya le rona re fitla mogo ra krelo re lebetse di gas cylinders ke di plasing re lebane le go besa mollo go etsa braai ra pie le bogobe rona se le Mangoyi re eme hlogo gore are yes a puta dilo a tsa mello e a etsa mello ka speed ka dikgong rona ntse re musi wa re fatla ara lona la dlala. The next day e be lo re go na le turkey le yona a ya peya ga monate mogo. So whenever go na le mzabalazo o tla re a re ye ngwana go gae ka 78 or somewhere more or ngwana kgesho ngwana ka ona le ngwana kwa a sa tseba ne le Springs or Tembisa re ise le Mangoyi re ise diphahlo awa te ba tsia ga ke ba drive ke ba ise mogo re boya go be mnate. Then thereafter itsa ke rekile ntlo e ka 78 Mangoyi a ba mo botsa ba re me re tlo ya re etse braai. So ka the Easter tsa 1980 we were supposed to go tla le yena re ya gabo Mangoyi gamphatlhela. Most unfortunately Mangoyi e be lo re yena o tlhokofala before re ya.
Thank you, Your Excellency, Comrade Petrokov, Comrade Zakes Tolo, and Mama Mphahlele for those inspiring messages. The Kotane family in many ways represents the best revolutionary values of our liberation struggles. Comrade Moses Kotane was active in the trade union movement. He was an activist, organizer, and leader also of the ANC and the SACP. Very unusual for somebody to straddle the entire ambit of the alliance in the manner that he did, and probably something that a master student somewhere should begin to study and understand the impact that that had not only on the movement, but indeed on his family and his entire community. He played an instrumental role in the mutual ideological influence between the Revolutionary Alliance. We therefore call now on Comrade Lindy Sisulu to give us a message from the ANC. Comrade Lindy is an NEC member of the African National Congress.
Makotane is part of that group of women who bore the worst brunt of the struggle, not only because of their own conviction to ensure that we get our liberation, but as part of the vicious vindictiveness of the apartheid state. The security forces had perfected the art of psychological torture, its effects devastating on the women and the children of those targeted for their commitment to the liberation struggle. The arrests of largely the men who were in the struggle were dramatic, with intent to cause maximum psychological damage to entire families. Their raids would notably be around 3 or 4 a.m. They would pounce, break down doors, sending children running for cover to their parents. Imagine what their father would be feeling, seeing their children tormented in this way, terrified, kicked out of bed, screaming, and everywhere, their hands clasped in irons, unable to give comfort to the children. Makotane and many other women were there to make sure that they provided the children with some comfort, assured them that everything was okay. Daddy would be coming back in the morning. They never did come back in the morning. The security forces did this deliberately to humiliate the men. Unable to protect his terrified children, they would leave the house with everything in a mess. Their raids resembled a war situation. The women had to clean up and keep the children comforted. It was a constant torture and humiliation that all suffered in the absence of their husbands. They themselves threw themselves into struggle, but the women remained unrepentant in their conviction that one day we will be liberated. Mme Kotane left behind to look after the children, and she did an excellent job of this. If I have the opportunity, I will tell you of the successes of some of these children that she brought up single-handed. They have turned out to be some of the most unsung but outstanding citizens of our country. But back to Mme Kotane. She suffered and had to eke out a living from menial jobs. The last time she saw her husband, he had just taken a walk. She suffered long after the ANC had come home. But she was not one to complain. When I became Minister of Human Settlements in 2014, I was determined that women like her would be prioritized in building houses for military veterans. We decided to put two special houses in a military veterans village called Vleehof. This was for Mme Kotane and Ma Edith, who just passed away a few months ago. I made a great deal of fanfare. I was extremely proud to dedicate these two houses next to each other to our struggle heroines. And this is where I learned the most humbling lesson of my life. Mme Kotane's response to this was simple, yet so profound. She said, "Now tell me, does Lindiwe expect me to leave where I have been living for the past 20 years, to go into a community that I have no knowledge of and leave my community here, my community that means so much to me, and relocate to a lonely place that she has prepared for me? Please go and tell her thank you very much, but no thanks. I'll stay in my home here in Deep Kloof." The point I'm making, comrades, is we are so busy, we forget people who gave us everything that we now celebrate as a free country. Her community, the people who cared for her, her neighbors, not the ANC, not the SACP, that was her community, her neighbors. And we were there all the time to provide her with a neighborhood, with the love and comfort that she so deserved. That is the story of most of them. And we think of ourselves as caring. By whose definition? Mme Kotane is gone now. She should leave us with a great deal of soul searching. But let me end my tribute to this beautiful, outstanding woman on a lighter note. In 1978, I was asked to represent the South African youth at an ANC youth conference in Moscow. Comrade Moses Kotane was in hospital in Moscow, and Aunt Ruth had arranged that I should go and visit him, telling him that somebody has come straight from home and bring him tidings. We went to the hospital, a few pleasantries, and he asked if I had any news of his wife. Embarrassingly, I shook my head. Yes, she sends her love. I myself had just been released from detention and had not had the time to go and visit anybody. But I felt that at that particular time, perhaps that's a comfort he needed to hear. "Oh, okay, so did she say anything?" "No." "Nothing at all?" he asked. "No." "Well, I don't think you've been to see her. And do you know how I know? Because she would have told you to bring me some sweets. Because here, where I am, the doctors refuse me sweets. And she would have made sure that she sent some sweets. You would have brought sweets from her." He died a few months later. A political giant who in his dying days longed for his wife and the comfort that only she could give. Ma Kotane, thank you for everything that you've done for each one of us. Thank you for the children that you've provided for this country. Thank you for your exemplary behavior and teachings. Thank you for being who you are.
Thank you very much, Comrade Lindy, for sharing some of your personal experiences with the Kotane family. And obviously, one must remember that if you walk into that house even now, you see Ma Kotane in her beautiful ANC Women's League shirt, and everywhere you walk, this is an ANC home. So she was very proud of being part of the ANC family, as well as her own neighborhood in Diepkloof. Thank you so much. We now would ask that the eulogy be delivered by the first Deputy General Secretary of the South African Communist Party. Comrade Mapaile, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Program Directors, DSG, Comrade Jesse Juate, and Comrade Jacob Mawabula, our Provincial Secretary in Gauteng, and to greet the family of Kotane and Sibito, and extend our sincerest condolences on the passing on of Mama Rebecca Kotane, a stalwart of our movement, a courageous woman, a heroine of our liberation war. Let me also greet the leadership of our different structures of the mass democratic movement, Comrade Lindiwe Sisulu from the NEC of the ANC, and 7 minister in our government, Mama Nazo Kumalo, as well as Comrade Zake Tolo from the Veterans League of our movement, Mamba Tabile Dlamini, President of the ANC Women's League, and Comrade Steve Mashia, CEO of the Moses Kotane Foundation. But in particular, to Sis Dolly, Auspesi, as well as Joe and Sam, the daughter and sons of Mama Rebecca and Moses Kotane, as well as the grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren. The entire Alliance leadership and our structures, particularly in the Greater Joburg region, in our case, the Linda Jabani district of the Communist Party. And let me also, from the beginning, express our sincerest thanks to the Kotane family for their massive contribution to our liberation struggle. Their selflessness and revolutionary example, humility that they've shared with the people on behalf of our movement remains exemplary. And we want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts on behalf of our movement as a whole. You have given us more than what a family can give to a country. We want also to thank the manner in which you looked after Mama Kotane. This was an exemplary way of showing how to care for someone. And we appreciate as well that you allowed us as the Communist Party and the rest of our movement, the ANC, COSATU, as well as Sanko comrades and our mass democratic formations, to always intrude in your family to see Mama and to pass messages. And in this regard, I want to thank, on behalf of our movement, all the nurses and the family members that took care of Mama, especially in the last days, Mpumi, her granddaughter, and various doctors, Dr. Mulaba, Kawana Mulaba, as well as Dr. Lincoln Strishe, who were mandated as well by the Communist Party to especially keep on looking after Mama, and many other doctors on behalf of the family that looked after her life. Our district leadership, Comrade Africa, leading our Linda Jabani district, and our SSCP branch, Albert Nzola branch in Diepkloof, as well as the ANC Solintuli branch in Deep Kloof that have always ensured that Mama's life is celebrated. We say, keep up the good work. Your task now is to emulate her unrivaled example of love for people, her selflessness of service to a community, her humility and respect for people, young and old, and you must keep celebrating her. You are now as well tied up to Bella. I was very happy to see all of you who tried, despite the restrictions, and you respected the COVID-19 protocols and traveled to Pella, where she was laid to rest. I could not join you there myself after I lost my sister, and we buried her on Sunday. We want to express our sincerest thanks to the Premier of Northwest, Professor Job Mukhoro, who requested the President to offer Mam Kotane a special provincial official funeral. This we don't take for granted, because not only was she befitting of this honor, but we appreciate the efforts that he took together with his executive for giving Mama this resounding send-off. We also equally appreciate other important contributors, including in this case, the B3, for continuing to support many of our stalwarts, as well as the Moses Kotane Foundation, for which she was the patron. But indeed, comrades, last Saturday, we buried one of our finest stalwarts, an unassuming revolutionary, a humble, courageous woman, a heroine of our people. She has seen all the critical phases and parts of our revolutionary movement and tribulations. The formation of the ANC Women's League, and became friends with its president. The formation of the ANC Youth League, and the critical periods of turbulence in our movement, including the first split or major split of our movement with the establishment of the PAC that broke from the movement in 1959. But before that, the massive mobilization for the Freedom Charter, for which she worked very hard for, the mass mobilization and protest of our women to the union building in Pretoria to protest against the past laws and to confront straydom, as well as her active role in the participation of the January 1957 bus boycott in Alexander. And she will walk all the way from Alexander to the inner city of Johannesburg as part of that particular boycott. These are the sacrifices that today we enjoy as consequences of these sacrifices by people like Mam Kotane. Today, our revolution, like many other revolutions, it's in need of effective mass participation in all its phases, from the rudimentary structures in our communities, in our wards, in which we need to ensure that our movement and all that it stood for, it's been implemented. It is in this regard that it is critical we reflect a little bit on our revolution. Obviously, one of the most difficult tasks of the revolution is its execution, particularly like in our case, when the revolution was prohibited, the revolutionary movement later on was banned, and the executioners of the struggle in the front line on behalf of the people had to face tremendous sacrifices. But in celebrating or executing our revolution, we normally have great fanfare at the point of its victory, like our moment of 1994, the democratic breakthrough of 1994. That gave too much hope to our people and the oppressed people, not only in South Africa, but the rest of the region, and also inspired the world. And we're able to share the strength of our leadership with the rest of the world, President Mandela will take over the leadership of the country in April 1994 after the elections. And this remains an important intervention in our revolutionary struggle. But it's also important to say, during the period of victory of a revolution, that is when the revolution itself becomes very delicate. That moment requires political guidance, continuous mass mobilization and support, as well as the implementation of important revolutionary measures to change the lives of our people. And in our case, we started with many important programs that should be fulfilled to their totality. For instance, mass housing campaign. Although later on, Comrade Sisulu, you'll notice that we are relying on government provision of houses, when actually we should include the mobilization of the people in mass construction of houses. We launched the Masakane campaign. We introduced programs for water provision, access to healthcare and education, and other critical services, including social security services like social grants, to the rest of our people, to relieve the majority of our people who were thrown mercilessly into the dark abyss of poverty by apartheid capitalism. We must also appreciate that during this time, revolutionaries should remain vigilant, because like any other revolution, the process of revolution has its highs and lows, the ebbs and the highs. And ours has not been an exception. And therefore, all other revolutions will face zigzags, crossroads, or will reach crossroads. Sometimes they can even turn rightward. And if they turn rightward, they will not serve the interest of the people. Rightward revolutions cannot change the lives of the people. They can rely perhaps on the market, which have never resolved any social crisis. And yet, sometimes during this period of the revolution, we may get satisfied with some mere cosmetic changes that hide real problems facing the people. And sometimes during this period, you may also find bureaucrats in our movement and in our democratic government who mesmerize the leadership with false progress, pumping them with progress statistics only, and forgot to tell them about the challenges, the number of houses that we still need to build, the number of people who live in poverty. They can just characterize that we are dealing with the crisis of poverty. So we must continue to remain vigilant, like how Mam Kotane was. Every time you visited her at home, even when you are coming to see her, the first thing she will ask, even when she's not well sometimes, the first thing she will ask is that, Ujile, have you eaten? Please, mufeng tiye. So that's how she was. She had a homely home. And it is in this regard that you realize the example of what a revolutionary is not something that is too sophisticated. Is to meet the basic needs of the people. And every revolution that fails to do that will soon not get the support of the masses. But revolutions, comrades, can stagnate or mark time. And sometimes when it does so, may lose support from the majority of the people. Our National Democratic Revolution, the Communist Party has characterized, has sometimes reached a point of stagnation. And there's a conflict between being in stagnation and regressing or advancing forward. The regressive forces have gained ascendancy in our society. The right-wing forces have confidence to confront the liberation heroes and heroines, and even play to us the rule book of morality, all because of our own conduct as revolutionaries. Therefore, when a revolution has reached a point of stagnation like ours, we need to rejuvenate it, to give it strength. And in this regard, we need to look at the example of leadership that has been there over the years and change our behavioral pattern. It is in this regard that the leadership of Mam Kotane comes in handy. She was rooted amongst the people all throughout. Despite the possibilities that she could have tapped upon, she remained amongst the people. And we need to earn, as a movement, the honor and the stripes of being the leader of society. This cannot be imposed on society. Our people must see our sacrifices, our commitment, and understand that this liberation movement that gave the greatest sacrifice for our country to be free, yes, indeed earns the title of the leader of society. And if you look at the example of Mama Kotane's life, yes, we end it, but sometimes it's more difficult to emulate that example. We should continue to try and emulate that example. But to achieve this, we need to unify the movement, because, comrades, a divided house will lead no one, nor shall it be followed by anyone. We must sort out internal problems in our movement, not allow outside forces to bring in divisions and defocus us. We must remain focused on the strategic objective. At the moment, the fight against COVID-19 is important. The fight against inequality, poverty, and unemployment, and rebuilding our economy, reindustrialization of our economy so that it can create sustainable jobs remains important. It is therefore critical that people like Mam Kotane, who took part in their own right in our revolutionary struggle, should be celebrated properly by the revolutionary movement. And therefore, towards self-reliance of our people, we need to also learn how people like Mam Kotane sustained themselves when they were denied to hold proper jobs by the apartheid government, which continued to harass her and her family. Therefore, one of the things we want to propose is that our democratic government, particularly through the Department of Arts and Culture, should be able to create a special institution to look at the contributions of our stalwarts, to properly document and write the history of our struggle, and look into many other aspects of our country's contribution and its people's contribution to the democratic struggle and liberation freedom that we now enjoy. In that way, we must deepen the fight, particularly in a memory, against gender-based violence. We must ensure that the system of capitalism is confronted, even from the policy posture of government, because capitalism and its exploitation of the working class will never guarantee total freedom of the people. Therefore, all this and other interventions by the democratic movement and the government should take shape. And we use the example of Mam Kotane. It was important to see this documentary with the granddaughters. All those documentaries, type of them, should become dominant even in our public discourse, so that we learn the sacrifices that our people have made to the freedom that we enjoy today. But in this regard, another example is to learn from how Mama never felt entitled to the outcomes of the revolution, which would have isolated her from the benefits of the broader majority of the people that she lived within. Her neighbors, the community of Deep Truth, where she embedded herself, and they became the fortress that defended her against atrocities unleashed upon her and the family by the apartheid regime. She continued to live amongst the people. She celebrated many of her birthdays with them, including our structures like I indicated earlier. But without tackling this problem of social reproduction in our society, that is the sustenance of existing form of social reproduction, of making livelihoods by the people, which is anchored on the capitalist system, we will not be able to build a self-reliant economy of the people in which government doesn't have to pay people particular money in order for them to buy food, but people can buy food by themselves because of their own self-reliance. Government must facilitate the ability for such to happen. Of course, comrades, it is important to appreciate the fact that Mam Kotane now joins Moses Kotane in Bela, where they are both buried. We need to improve that facility where they are buried. Moses Kotane, this towering revolutionary of our country, is perhaps one of the least celebrated leaders of our revolutionary movement. And yet, all the key stalwarts of our movement, particularly those who participated in modern revolutionary warfare under the leadership of the African National Congress, have always indicated his influence, his role, his sacrifices in the liberation of our struggle. I agree with you, Comrade DSG, that perhaps some students who are doing masters and other studies can focus a bit on the life of Moses Kotane. In the SACP, in our celebration of our centenary this year, Moses Kotane occupies a strong position given his leadership role. We have in the SACP what we call, Comrade Steve Mashia from the foundation, Moses Kotane thought. We want the Moses Kotane thought to be properly developed, because it is this Moses Kotane thought that embraces what Comrade the DS teacher Situati was mentioning, the ability to participate in the alliance structures, one person, the centrality of the common membership of COSATU or the trade unions, the SACP, the ANC itself, and therefore the centrality of the National Democratic Revolution. So Moses Kotane contributed immensely in the development of the National Democratic Revolution to the conditions of South Africa. And therefore, his memory must never be left only to the Communist Party. His memory and legacy is the legacy of this country. And Mam Kotane features prominently in the memory and legacy of Ntate Kotane, because she was the pillar of strength that he relied upon. And indeed, a heroine in her own right, an activist in her own right, like we indicated. But we must appreciate, comrade, that Mama left us a good example, the same as Ntate Kotane. When we were to bury her in Bela, we had to start with basic things like cleaning the place where she is. We must raise it, Comrade Jesse, from the SACP side, that we are unhappy in the manner that that monument of Moses Kotane is being looked after. It was like it's just a structure that is erected and no appropriate attention is given to that monument. If we will continue in this way, by the way, I've also seen how the monument of Langalibalele Dube is being looked after, but on the next to it, it's an abandoned theater for many years. So this posture that we have towards important revolutionary monuments must change in our movement if we are to sustain our history and learn properly from it. Therefore, we must appreciate, lastly, to the Kotane family for allowing us to share Mama with us. Mama was a very lovely person, always laughing, who loved English football. She supported the team that I support as well, sometimes in Britain. And sometimes when I visit her, I'll tease her by wearing our colors, the Arsenal Football Club. But we shall miss her enduring smile as the SACP, her counsel and compassion for the downtrodden, and we remain indebted to her sacrifices to the liberation struggle despite the constant harassment by the apartheid regime, and we remain indebted to her for her example, courage and resilience, and tenacity and ability represent many women in our country who looked after families whilst they were equally activists in their own right. We will miss you, Mama, and we cherish your love to all of us and the movement as your children. You never discriminated against us. Thank you for your selfless service to our people, Rebecca Kotane. Thank you for your contribution to our liberation movement, the instrument of the people, the African National Congress that you so loved. Thank you also for your contribution to your community and to your church that you selflessly committed yourself to. And may your undying fighting spirit live on to inspire many generations of young people, especially young women, to continue the struggle and never to betray it. Long live the undying spirit of Mam Rebecca Kotane. Long live. Long live the Alliance. Long live. Forward to a radical national democratic revolution. Forward. Thank you very much.
Bua Komanisi, thank you very much, Comrade Soli. Long live the Communist Party of Moses and Rebecca Kotane. Long live. Long live the Revolutionary Alliance. Long live. Family members, comrades and friends, we have now come to the end of our rich program in celebration of the life of Mama Rebecca Kotane. Thank you to family and community members, to all the speakers who have done tributes and messages, and to fellow program director, our DSD, Comrade Jesse Duarte. As we close this tribute to Mama Rebecca Kotane, let us remember to wear our masks, to keep social distance, and to wash our hands regularly. Thank you, comrades, and good night.
Sari uswara tipaka muhali mataki aruna makosi gazi kulonyaka wetu watinda bafazi watinda ingomoto pasopa uzogufa watinda bafazi watinda imbogoto pasopa uzogufa. Side by side, women of the world, side by side, fight for freedom. Side by side, women of the world, fight for freedom now. Side by side, women of the world, side by side, fight for freedom. Side by side, women of the world, fight for freedom now. Mohosi wala Suhomba sari Mosari utwara Tipaka muhali mataki aruna Mosari utwara Tipaka muhali mataki aruna Mako